Do you think that women are taking jobs from men, or do you think that the office is just more conducive to a woman's personality?
I think that who's ever qualified to do a job should have it. Men and women to me are the same, uh, other than the biological, physiological makeup. I think talent is talent, and ability is ability. And I can't tell you what a guy's head is if he's not correct. But I appreciate and embrace women for being who they are and what
Do
they
you
can
think
do.
that women are taking jobs from men? Do you think that women are behaving more like men? Or do you think that the jobs are just more conducive to the personality of women?
I think nowadays, yes, women are being more aggressive. They are taking the place of men. I think they're using what they have to get where they need to get in the workforce because nowadays everything is so, is with the recession, everyone wants the job. Everyone makes the extra dollar. And women, sex sells. People rather see women. So women also use what they got. If anytime management is a male or a man, they use their attributes or their physical attributes to do what they got to do to get to the top. Whereas though men can't really do that nowadays. It's hard for us to use what we got because still it's predominantly men in management roles in big corporations. So I think women do whatever it takes to get that one up over a man if they're in the same position
Do
trying
you
to get to
think
the top.
that in general the office environment is more conducive to women's personalities than men? And do you think, if so, do you think that's why women are becoming more and more successful in their careers than men?
Another tough one for me. I'm in outside sales and have been probably the last 13, 14 years. So I'm really not in an office a whole lot.
Okay.
So that's really again a tough one for me to answer with the dynamics that are going on these days.
Okay. What about just in your own environment, the man-woman politics in your environment? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Um, I don't, the tricky part is always walking the line with the showing interest in the sexual harassment piece. That's always a tough one. That's tricky because you don't know whether you should approach or not, because if you do approach and it's not a comfortable situation, you might be in HR's office later on that afternoon and you just had a general interest in the person. In terms of the success piece, I think women are more detail-oriented generally than guys, so I think that in itself plays into the success of women in general. And now that a lot of the barriers that used to be there are coming down, not gone, but coming down, women are just starting to shine.
Think that women are taking men's jobs?
Not really, because not yet at least. But I think there's that fear that that women might take men's job within that community. But I think it's a matter. I think men are becoming more and more comfortable as time goes on. So I don't think that's such a big issue. But I think that's where the politics, I guess, lies at work between men and women.
Thoughts on the dynamics and politics between men and women at work?
Well, you must be talking about black men, because white men are doing just fine in the workplace. Last I checked, especially in America and most of the world. So I'm asking that question. You must be talking about men of color.
Not necessarily.
Well, I mean, in our society, in our present society, and with our present understandings and the things that we do to one another, there is a very different experience and dynamic. In other words, the answer to your question, I can answer it from a man of color perspective.
Okay.
So, ask the question again real quick, I'm sorry.
And what are your
Specific
thoughts and
question?
feelings about the politics and dynamics between men and women in the workplace? And do you think that women are are they behaving more like men, or do you think the office environment is just more conducive to a woman's personality?
Okay.
Do you think women are taking jobs from men?
Well, I don't think women are taking anything from anybody, because women are, if we're talking about in the workplace, there are very few women who have the power to take a job from a man or anyone else for that matter. What people are doing in the workplace is trying to survive. They're doing what they have to do to have the basic needs that we all have to exist. What do I think of the social dynamics between men and women in the workplace? I think women and men in the workplace are doing whatever is required of them and what they feel is expected of them, which is a big issue because you can never truly satisfy anyone else's expectations of you. But we work really hard to do that, by the way. But that, as we also can attest to, that is a futile at best initiative and requires an enormous amount of time and energy. But we are consumed by it and do it a lot. That said, we're doing, in the workplace, we're doing whatever it is we have to do to exist. What we don't do in the workplace, so to your question, what do I think of the dynamic between men and women? I think it's what it is. I mean, women are doing everything they have to do to provide for their families and to provide for themselves first and their family second. So are men. The people in power in the workplace are doing what they are there to do, which is wield their power. So in other words, they're looking at who can be better served. They're maneuvering as well. So yes, they make decisions to sometimes have a woman take over where a man was. That decision is based on all kinds of things that we will typically never know about. Okay, but there's a core dysfunctionality that gets back to ourselves and our own power, and where we have power, which is within ourselves and within our choices in life, that we don't talk to. And that choice is simply, we don't question, for example, why it is I have to have a job and be in the workplace in the first place in order to survive, in order to have the things I'm supposed to have, the basic freedoms of shelter, food, and nourishment, and provisions for my family, which is all most of us really are interested in anyway. Why is it that I'm subject to having to make sure that Bob or Steve, who is in some position of authority, quote unquote, over me, can decide whether or not I even have a job today or tomorrow? We don't question that. We don't ask those very basic questions. Who gave Bob or Steve the power in the first place? The truth of it is, we did. We gave it to them. Because the truth of it is, they don't have it if we don't show up in the morning. If we decide to do something else tomorrow, if enough people decided tomorrow, you know what? Blip this job thing. I'm not going to work. What would AT&T do then? What would Walmart be if no one showed up to work tomorrow morning?
What do you think about the dynamics between men and women at work?
Well, I personally think it has to stay 100% professional. You get involved with a coworker of the opposite sex or the same sex sexually, it causes a lot of problems. Because you're here to do your job. It's like the saying goes, it's strictly business, nothing personal, and that has to be practiced at all times in the workplace.
Do you think that women are beginning to behave like men at work?
In the aspect of taking charge and giving out the orders, I agree with that 100%. I'd say 4 out of 5 of my managers are women, and I have just as much respect for them as I do my male managers, and maybe even more for a few.
Do you think that women are taking jobs from men?
No, women are getting the jobs that they deserve because they have the talent and the know-how and the creativity to create a market for themselves and make the type of money that they're worth. That goes with anybody, without saying. So, like I said, I am not insecure in any part of a gender, or even in life. Maybe that sounds a little cocky because I know who I am.
Do you feel like women are taking jobs from men at work, for example? You have to look at me, though.
Where I work, I think it's more, there's more women in higher positions than there are men.
Okay, why do you think that is?
Because I think as far as the dependability, most employers find that women can be more dependable.
I feel that men are competing with women in a sense that the office environment is maybe more conducive to a woman's personality than a man's, and that it might be making it easier for women to be more successful than men in the office?
I wouldn't say that a woman's personality is more conducive. I think that women have made more gains because, I tutor elementary school, And you can look at the shift between how the boys and girls act. And the girls are more serious. I mean, you can look at college today. There are more women in college, trying to get ahead as opposed to men, especially black men and women. So I just think the sheer numbers kind of dictate what the climate is and what the overall environment is like. I mean, I work in a medical field, so there are women everywhere. You hardly ever see any men in the lab as med techs or chemists. It's primarily a woman-dominated field, and that's simply because I think women at this point, since there are more opportunities, more of them going to college, I mean, the sheer numbers are just dictating